The stars looked different from Earth's orbital station. Even after 30 years of faster-than-light travel, most humans still felt a sense of wonder gazing at distant suns. Ambassador Han stood at the viewport, watching ships from a dozen alien worlds dock at the massive Galactic Council hub. Humans were still the new kids on the block, tolerated but rarely taken seriously. "Ambassador, you should sit down," whispered A to June, nodding toward the council chamber where representatives from 37 species debated trade routes. "The Meldorians are giving us those looks again." Han nodded but didn't move. The tall, crystal-skinned Meldorians had made their feelings clear. Humans were too emotional, too unpredictable, and far too primitive to have a real voice here. "Let them look," Han muttered. "They've been spacefaring for 10,000 years and still haven't figured out how to make a decent cup of coffee." The chamber's mood shifted when every communication device simultaneously activated. Screens, neural implants, and sensory fields all carried the same signal. A strange, pulsing pattern that bypassed translation matrices. The Meldorian representative's crystalline skin clouded with confusion. "The signal contains no recognizable linguistic markers," announced the Trill representative, their tentacles waving in agitation. "We cannot process its meaning." Han felt something others missed. The signal wasn't just data. It had a rhythm, a desperate quality that made the hair on the back of his neck stand up. He'd heard something similar once years ago when a child had been trapped in a collapsed building. Not words, just raw fear and need. "It's not a language," Han said quietly. "It's a scream." The council erupted in debate. The Varathi insisted on establishing a committee to analyze the transmission. The Dra'kari questioned whether responding violated non-interference protocols. The Zhen worried about potential contamination from unknown biological entities. Captain Kim of the Earth vessel Persistence received a private message from Han. Read it twice before summoning her bridge crew. "We're leaving in 20 minutes, she told them, bringing up coordinates on the main display. "The council will debate for weeks. Someone out there doesn't have weeks." Second Officer Park raised an eyebrow. "Without council authorization? That's the right thing to do," Kim finished. "Humans still remember what it means to cry for help." As the council chamber filled with proposals for subcommittees and risk assessments, 6 human ships quietly disengaged from the station. By the time the Meldorian representative called for a preliminary vote on establishing communication protocols, the small Earth fleet had already jumped to light speed. 3 days later, they arrived at an uncharted system near the galaxy's edge. Communications Officer Yoon picked up local transmissions, fragmented and distorted. "There's definitely a civilization here," she reported, "and they're in trouble." The main screen activated, showing a blue-green planet partially covered by what looked like a moving shadow. The shadow wasn't natural. It moved with purpose, consuming everything in its path. "What is that?" whispered Navigator Jin. Kim leaned forward. "Whatever sent that cry for help." The ships moved closer, sensors picking up thousands of small vessels, fleeing the planet. They weren't military craft but civilian transports, overloaded and failing. "They're evacuating," Park said, "and not very successfully." A transmission broke through, visual this time. The alien had 4 eyes and silver-blue skin. Behind it, walls shook and lights flickered. "You came," the alien said in broken galactic. "Standard. Others ignore. You came." Kim stepped forward. "We heard your call. What's happening down there?" "Death comes. Eats everything. Our technology fails. Please." The transmission cut off as darkness swallowed the room. Kim turned to her. "Crew, prepare landing shuttles. We're going down there." "Captain," Park objected, "that thing is consuming their technology. Their civilization is centuries ahead of ours and they can't stop it. What can we possibly do?" Kim's eyes remained fixed on the planet. "They called for help. And something tells me being primitive might actually work in our favor this time." As the landing teams prepared, Kim made one final ship-wide announcement. "The galaxy just learned something important about humans today. When someone cries, Out, we answer, not because it's logical, not because it's safe, but because it's right. Now let's show them what humanity can do. The shuttles launched toward the darkening planet, carrying humans armed with determination and something no other species had thought to bring: hope. The shuttle shook violently as it entered the planet's atmosphere. Lieutenant Park gripped the safety harness, knuckles white. Through the viewport, he could see the other 5 human shuttles, small against the vast darkness spreading across the world below. "Everyone check your gear," Park called out. 20 men and women double-checked their equipment, mostly analog devices, nothing fancy. After hearing about the void consuming advanced technology, Captain Kim had made the call. No neural interfaces, no quantum comms, nothing that might attract attention. "Old school," muttered Technician Yoon, patting her mechanical compass. "My grandfather would be proud." The shuttle's comm system crackled. "This is Captain Kim. Remember, we don't know what we're dealing with down there. Stay in radio contact. Use the buddy system and trust your instincts. The Valari didn't call for help because they needed our fancy tech. They called because they needed someone to show up." Park nodded to himself. That was humanity in a nutshell. Not the most advanced, not the strongest, but they showed up. 30 seconds to touchdown," announced the pilot. "Brace yourselves. It's going to be rough." The shuttle hit hard, skidding across what looked like a plaza of some kind. Park was first out the door, air sensors in hand. "Atmosphere's breathable but thin, like being in the mountains. Take it easy until you adjust." The sky above was wrong, half normal blue, half consumed by what looked like living shadow. Where the shadow touched, buildings crumbled slowly, as if being eaten from the inside out. "Look." Medic Jin pointed toward movement in a partially collapsed structure. "Survivors." 3 Valari emerged, moving with caution. They stood taller than humans, with 4 arms and silvery blue skin that seemed to shimmer. One stepped forward, 4 eyes blinking in what might have been surprise. "You actually landed," the Valari said, voice melodic despite the translator's mechanical tone. "We thought the void usually consumes incoming vessels." Park approached slowly, hands visible. "We're from Earth. I'm Park. We came to help." The Valari touched its chest. "I am Zell, lead scientist. These are Nari and Day, my colleagues. Your technology? It's so simple." Jin stepped forward. "Is that bad?" Zell's mouth curved in what might have been a smile. "It might be what saves us all." A rumble shook the ground. Several hundred meters away, a building that resembled a silver spiral simply collapsed in on itself, consumed by the advancing darkness. "We should move," Day urged. "The research facility is safer, for now." The humans followed the Valari through streets littered with abandoned vehicles and strange devices that sparked and sputtered. The air had an electric taste, and Park's skin prickled with static. "What is that thing?" Park asked, nodding toward the darkness. "We call it the void," Zell explained. 3 weeks ago, our quantum physicists were testing a new communication system. Something went wrong. They opened something. At first, it was just a small anomaly. Then it grew. It consumes energy, matter, information, especially advanced technology. Our weapons, our shields, our evacuation systems, all failed. They reached a dome-shaped building with thick walls. Inside, dozens of Valari worked frantically at stations with equipment that looked strangely primitive compared to the technology visible in the city. "We've had to adapt," Nari explained, gesturing to mechanical devices and paper diagrams. "The more advanced the technology, the faster the void consumes it." Park's radio crackled. "Park, this is Captain Kim. The other teams are reporting the same thing across the city. The void seems to ignore our tech. It's too primitive to interest it. How's your situation?" "We've made contact with Valari scientists," Park replied. "They've got a research facility. Captain, they've had to downgrade their tech to avoid this thing." A loud boom shook the building. Through a window, Park saw one of the human shuttles rise shakily into the air, trying to escape a tendril of darkness that reached for it. The shuttle's engines flared brighter, then went suddenly dark. The vessel dropped from the sky like a stone. No. Park pressed against the glass. The shuttle crashed somewhere in the city center, a plume of smoke rising from the impact site. Jin grabbed his arm. We've got to help them. Zell touched Park's shoulder with one of 4 hands. The void is accelerating. It's learning. How do we stop it? Park demanded. Zell exchanged looks with the other Valeri. We don't know if we can. Our civilization has existed for 50,000 years. We've colonized hundreds of worlds. We've mapped black holes and harnessed the power of suns. And now we're drawing on paper and using mechanical gears because everything else attracts that. Park watched another building collapse in the distance. Then maybe that's exactly what we need. Humans are pretty good at doing a lot with a little. Dee approached with a hand-drawn map. There's something you should see. Beneath the city center where the void first appeared. Ancient ruins. Older than our civilization. The void emerged when our scientists accessed something there. Park nodded grimly. Then that's where we need to go. He turned to his team. Get your gear. No electronics. Nothing powered. Compasses, mechanical lights, the works. Jin looked nervous. We're heading toward that thing? On purpose? Park managed to smile. Humans, right? The smart move would be running away. No wonder the other species think we're crazy. He checked his watch. Mechanical. Wind up. Radio Captain Kim. Tell her we're going to the source. The Valari have the brains to understand this thing, but maybe we have the guts to face it. As the team prepared to move out, Park noticed Zell watching them with all 4 eyes. What is it? He asked. In all our history, Zell said quietly, when we encountered new species, we measured them by their technological advancement. We dismissed your kind as barely spaceworthy. The Valari gestured toward the humans checking ropes and packing first aid kits. We were wrong about what matters. Outside, the darkness grew closer, swallowing the beautiful alien city bite by bite. But for the first time since it appeared, something else was growing too. Hope. Dr. Lee wiped sweat from his brow as he studied the ancient markings on the underground chamber walls. The air was thick and warm, smelling faintly of ozone. Above them, the void continued to consume the Valary city. But down here, protected by hundreds of meters of rock and primitive lighting systems, they had a moment to think. These symbols repeat, Lee muttered, tracing his fingers over patterns that spiraled across the stone. See how they flow? It's not just writing. It's a diagram. Tay, the Valari archaeologist, nodded. Her 4 arms moved independently, sketching the symbols onto paper. Our scientists discovered this chamber 3 weeks ago. They believed it contained secrets of the Forerunners, the species that came before us. And that's when everything went wrong? Lee asked. They activated something. Tay pointed to a circular depression in the center of the room. There was a device. When they powered it with our quantum field generator, Lee knelt by the depression. They woke it up. Park entered the chamber, followed by Jin, who carried medical supplies. Captain Kim's reporting the void is spreading faster. 2 more shuttles lost. We're down to 3 teams now. Lee barely looked up. I need more time. We don't have it, Park snapped. Whatever you're going to figure it out faster. Tay's silver-blue skin pulsed with what Lee had learned was anxiety. Your species is remarkably calm facing extinction. Jin sat on a fallen column. Oh, we're terrified. We just hide it better than most. Lee stood suddenly. It's not a weapon. Everyone turned to him. These markings, Lee continued, excitement in his voice. They're not describing a weapon. It's a safeguard. A filter. He pulled out his notebook, paper, not digital, and began sketching rapidly. The Forerunners built this as a test. When a civilization reaches a certain technological threshold, they find this chamber. If they approach it with wisdom, they pass. If they activate it recklessly, they get the void, Park finished. Exactly. Lee pointed to a sequence of symbols. See this? It's showing energy states. The void doesn't just eat technology, it consumes specific energy patterns, the kind produced by advanced quantum systems, neural networks, and synthetic consciousness. He looked at Tay. The very foundations of Valari technology. An explosion rumbled from above, sending dust cascading from the ceiling. The voids reached the surface access point, Park said grimly. We're trapped down here. Tay's 4 eyes blinked rapidly. Can we deactivate it? Reverse what our scientists did? Lee studied the symbols more carefully. Maybe. These patterns suggest a resonance, key, a counter frequency that could neutralize the void, but we'd need to broadcast it at exactly the right strength from exactly the right location. The center of the void, Tay said quietly. Where it began. Jin shook her head. That's suicide. Nothing survives in there. We've seen what happens. Lee's fingers traced a particular symbol that repeated throughout the chamber, a spiral with a dot at its center. Nothing Valari survives, but humans. He turned to Park. Our technology is too primitive to attract the void's attention. But what about our brains? Park frowned. What about them? Valari neural patterns are structured, logical, with perfect mathematical symmetry, Lee explained. But human brains are chaotic, contradictory, full of random connections and emotional processing that defies pure logic. Tay looked skeptical. How does that help us? The void was designed to target and consume advanced logical systems, Lee said. But human thought doesn't work that way. We're messy, unpredictable. He pulled out a small mechanical device from his pack, a simple radio transmitter he'd modified during their descent. If I can calibrate this to broadcast the resonance pattern, and if a human carried it into the center, they might survive long enough to activate it, Park finished. Jin stepped forward. That's a lot of ifs, Doctor. Lee didn't disagree. But it's the only plan we've got. A deep rumble shook the chamber more violently and chunks of ceiling crashed down nearby. We need to move, Park ordered. Now. As they gathered their equipment, Tay approached Lee. Your theory about human neural patterns, it's fascinating, but there's no way to test it. Lee smiled grimly. There never is with the best human ideas. We just try them and hope. They made their way through narrow tunnels, following Tay's hand-drawn map toward an emergency exit. The Valari moved gracefully despite her size, 4 arms occasionally steadying the humans when they stumbled. I've been wondering, Jin said as they climbed a steep passage. Why did the void affect your people so quickly? Your civilization spans hundreds of worlds. Tay paused. Because we standardized everything. Perfect efficiency. Every system connected, every technology compatible. When the void began consuming our networks, everything failed at once, Park realized. No backups, no alternatives. Yes, Tay admitted. We thought diversity was inefficient. They emerged into a different part of the city. The darkness was closer now, only a few blocks away. The air crackled with energy. Lee finished calibrating his device as they walked. The resonance pattern is set, but the broadcast range is limited. Whoever carries this needs to get within 100 meters of the void's center. Park took the device, studying it. I'll do it. No, Lee said firmly. This is my theory, my responsibility. Jin looked between them. There has to be another way. A voice crackled over Park's radio. Lieutenant, this is Captain Kim. Do you copy? Park answered, explaining their plan quickly. There was a long pause before Kim responded. Understood. We'll create a diversion to buy you time. And Lieutenant, good luck. As they reached the edge of the unaffected zone, they could see the void clearly now. It wasn't just darkness. It was an absence, a hungry nothingness that consumed light, matter, and meaning itself. Lee took the device back from Park. All my life I've studied ancient civilizations. I always wondered what happened to them, why they disappeared. He looked at the approaching void. Maybe this is why. They faced their test, and they failed. Tay touched his shoulder with one hand. And now it's humanity's turn. Maybe. Lee checked the device one final time. Or maybe the test isn't about technology at all. Maybe it's about having the wisdom to know when to step back and the courage to step forward when necessary. He looked at his fellow humans. Either way, we're about to find out. The void seemed to pulse as if sensing their presence. Lee took a deep breath and stepped toward it, the small mechanical device clutched in his hand. Behind him, human and Valeri voices called out words of encouragement. Ahead, the greatest test humanity had ever faced. Engineer June had never seen anything like it. The void pulsed before her, a living darkness that seemed to breathe. She clutched the resonance device to her chest, its small mechanical parts clicking softly. Dr. Lee had been ready to walk into that darkness himself, but his leg injury from the last tunnel collapse had made that impossible. I should be going, Park said again, standing beside her at the edge of what everyone now called the dead zone. June shook her head. You're in command now. The teams need you. She didn't mention that she had volunteered before anyone could stop her. Some decisions you make quickly, before your brain catches up with your heart. Park handed her a small pocket watch. Mechanical, no electronics, might still work in there. Thanks. June tucked it into her pocket. Any last advice? Don't die, Park said, then added more softly. Please. Behind them, the remaining human teams had set up a makeshift base with the Valeri scientists. Tay approached, her silver-blue skin dulled with exhaustion. The calculations are complete, the alien said. You'll need to reach the exact center and activate the device. The resonance pattern should disrupt the void's consumption process. Should, June repeated. Tay blinked all four eyes in what June had learned was their version of a grim smile. In 50,000 years of science, we've never encountered anything like this. Should is the best anyone can offer. June nodded. Good enough for me. Dr. Lee limped over, leaning on Jin's arm. Remember, your mind is your shield. The void targets logical patterns, systematic thinking. Stay human. What does that even mean? June asked. Unpredictable, emotional, the opposite of what the void expects. Lee pressed something into her hand, a small photo. My daughter. She's 6. I promised I'd bring her a souvenir from space. June stared at the smiling child. I'll get it back to you. A distant explosion drew their attention. Captain Kim's voice crackled over the radio. Diversion is in progress. You've got about 10 minutes before the void redirects. June took a deep breath. The others stepped back, giving her space. Only Tay remained close. We didn't think much of humans when you first joined the galactic community, the Valeri said quietly. Too emotional, too inconsistent. We were wrong. Well, June managed to smile. Being underestimated has its advantages. She faced the void. The edge of darkness was just meters away, a boundary where reality itself seemed to unravel. June clutched. The device checked its settings one last time and stepped forward. The first sensation was cold, bone-deep, mind-numbing cold. Then silence, as if sound itself had been erased. Her mechanical watch ticked loudly against her wrist, each click abnormally distinct. The void was darker than night, yet somehow she could see her hands, the ground beneath her feet. Everything else was gone. Keep moving, she whispered to herself, the sound of her voice strange and flat. Center of the void. Just a Sunday walk in the park. Each step was harder than the last, as if the void itself resisted her presence. She felt a pressure building in her mind, thoughts becoming slippery, memories fragmenting. The void was trying to understand her, to categorize and consume her consciousness like it had the Valeri technology. June didn't fight it. Instead, she let her mind wander. She thought about her mother's kimchi recipe. The sunset over Earth's Pacific Ocean. The stupid argument she'd had with her brother before leaving for this mission. Random, emotional human thoughts. The pressure eased slightly. You don't know what to do with me, do you? She said aloud, surprised at her own boldness. I'm not following your rules. Something shifted in the darkness. Not a movement she could see, but a change she could feel. The void was listening? June kept walking, checking her watch. 4 minutes gone. The center couldn't be much farther. She began to notice strange shapes in the darkness, geometries that shouldn't exist, patterns that hurt to look at directly. You're not just a weapon, she realized suddenly. You're alive. The darkness pulsed around her, and for a moment June felt something brush against her mind, ancient, patient, and utterly alien. Then pain shot through her head. The void had found a pattern in her thoughts, something it could latch onto. June gasped, dropping to one knee. The resonance device slipped in her sweat-slick hands. No, she gritted through clenched teeth. Not yet. She forced herself to think about the photo in her pocket. Lee's daughter. The Valari crying for help. Park's hand on her shoulder. Not logical thoughts, but emotional ones. Connections. The void's pressure wavered. June staggered forward, one step, then another. Her watch showed 7 minutes elapsed. The diversion wouldn't last much longer. Ahead, something different appeared. In the darkness, a point of absolute stillness, a place where even the void seemed to hold its breath. The center. June pushed toward it, fighting against resistance that felt like walking through tar. The device in her hands began to vibrate, responding to whatever existed at the core. Almost there, she gasped. Just a little. The pain in her head exploded, dropping her to her knees again. The void had found another pattern, another way in. Her thoughts scattered like leaves in a storm. In desperation, June reached for the photo in her pocket. Human connection, emotion, the exact things the void couldn't process. As her fingers touched the paper, something unexpected happened. The void touched back. Not an attack this time, but a question. Formless, wordless, but unmistakable. Why? Why would she walk into darkness for strangers? Why risk everything? What pattern explained this behavior? June laughed, a broken sound in the silence. There is no pattern. That's what you don't understand. She forced herself up, stumbling the last few meters to the center. The stillness there was profound, a single point where everything began and ended. June raised the device, fingers finding the activation switch. We don't make sense, she told the void. We never have. That's our strength. She flipped the switch. The device hummed to life, broadcasting its pattern into the heart of darkness. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the void screamed. Not with sound, but with feeling. A shockwave of confusion and pain that knocked June backwards. The darkness around her rippled and tore. Through the gaps, she caught glimpses of the city, of sky, of surprised Valari faces. The device continued its work, forcing the resonance pattern deeper into the void's structure. June felt the ancient consciousness thrashing, fighting against extinction. Then, impossibly, she felt something else, understanding. The void wasn't being destroyed. It was changing. Learning. The resonance pattern wasn't a weapon but a key, unlocking something buried in its programming. As consciousness slipped away from her, June had one final strange thought. We both passed the test. Outside the void, the watching humans and Valari saw the darkness contract, pulling back from the city like a tide retreating. At its center, a point of light appeared, growing brighter by the second. What's happening? Park demanded, shielding his eyes. Tay's forearms moved in a pattern of religious significance. A transformation. The light expanded, consuming the darkness from within. Where the void had been, something new took shape. Not destruction, but creation. And somewhere within it, Engineer June opened her eyes to a truth no species had discovered in 50,000 years. When the galaxy cried out, humanity answered. Part 5. The New Understanding. 3 weeks after what the Valari now called the Awakening, Ambassador Sun stood before the Galactic Council. The chamber was fuller than anyone could remember. Representatives from every spacefaring civilization had come to hear humanity's report. Sun felt small on the enormous speaking platform. Unlike most ambassadors who projected holograms and data, streams, he had brought only a simple wooden box. The Meldorian representative's crystalline skin rippled with what might have been annoyance. "Human ambassador's son," the council elder intoned. "You have been granted unprecedented speaking time to explain the events at Valari Prime. The council awaits your testimony." Sun opened the wooden box and removed a small mechanical device, the original prototype of the resonance emitter that June had carried into the void. "This is what saved a civilization," he said, his voice steady despite the hundreds of alien eyes watching him. "Not because it was advanced, but because it wasn't." He set the device on the podium. "For those who haven't heard the full story, 3 weeks ago, a sentient void began consuming the Valari homeworld. Nothing in their considerable technological arsenal could stop it. They sent out a distress call, a cry for help that most species ignored or debated responding to. The Trill representative's tentacles twitched uncomfortably. "We humans answered that call," Sun continued. "Not because we had better weapons or more advanced technology, but because that's what humans do when someone is in trouble. We show up." He activated a simple projection, no hologram, just light on a wall, showing images of the void's retreat and the strange, luminous phenomenon that had replaced it. What we discovered on Valari Prime wasn't just a weapon or a natural disaster. It was a test, one that the galaxy has been failing for thousands of years. Murmurs spread through the chamber. The Vorathi delegation buzzed with agitation. The void was created by the Forerunners, the species that predates all our civilizations. It wasn't designed to destroy. It was designed to teach. Sun gestured to where June sat in the Earth delegation. She looked different now, thinner, with a streak of white in her hair. The void had changed her. Engineer June did what no other being has done. She communicated with the void, not through technology or logical patterns, but through something uniquely human, our chaotic emotional thought patterns, our ability to act without calculating every outcome. He walked around the podium, making eye contact with different species as he passed them. The void was a safeguard, designed to activate when a civilization reached a technological threshold without the wisdom to use that technology responsibly. The Forerunners built many such safeguards throughout the galaxy, waiting for species that would prioritize progress over understanding. The Meldorian representative rose. "You claim the humans passed this test through emotional thinking? This is absurd. The Valari civilization is 10,000 years more advanced than yours." Sun nodded. "Exactly. And that was the problem." He brought up another image, the transformed void, now a shimmering field of light above the Valari capital city. The Valari built a perfect technological civilization. Every system integrated, every process optimized, every decision made through logical algorithms. When the void activated, it consumed those systems precisely because they were so perfect. Tay, the Valari scientist who had worked with the human teams, stepped onto the platform beside Sun. Her silver-blue skin gleamed under the chamber lights. "Ambassador Sun speaks truth," she said, her melodic voice carrying across the silent chamber. "Our perfection was our weakness. We eliminated redundancy, diversity of thought, and the chaos of emotion from our systems. We built our civilization like a single great machine." She gestured toward June with one of her forearms. "The humans showed us what we had forgotten, that wisdom isn't found in perfect logic, but in the messy space between order and chaos." Sun opened another compartment in the wooden box and removed a small glass cylinder. Inside floated what looked like liquid starlight, a sample of the transformed void. "The Forerunners didn't want to destroy advanced civilizations," he said. "They wanted to ensure that technological evolution was matched by ethical understanding. The void wasn't a weapon, it was a teacher." He set the cylinder down gently. Engineer June didn't destroy the void. She passed its test by demonstrating something no algorithm could predict. Self-sacrifice without calculation. Compassion without benefit analysis. The void recognized this as the missing element in the Valari approach to technology. Images appeared around the chamber, the transformed void now helping rebuild the Valari cities. integrating with their systems but keeping them balanced. Not destroying advanced technology, but ensuring it served life rather than replacing it. The way. Valerie have invited human scientists and philosophers to work alongside them. Sun continued. Not because we have better technology, we don't, but because we think differently. Because we remember what it means to be flawed, emotional, and alive. The council elder leaned forward. What are you proposing, Ambassador? Sun straightened his shoulders. I'm proposing a new understanding of our place in the galaxy. For too long, species have been ranked by technological advancement alone. We've been racing toward a future without asking if it's a future worth having. He gestured around the chamber. The Forerunners left these tests for a reason. How many other safeguards are waiting to activate across the galaxy? How many other civilizations might face extinction because they perfected their technology while forgetting their souls? June stood now, walking slowly to join Sun on the platform. The council watched in silence. No one had invited her to speak, yet no one moved to stop her. I spoke with it, she said simply. The void, or what the void became. It showed me others, like it, scattered across the stars. Waiting. Some have already activated on worlds we've never heard of. Civilizations that reached too far, too fast. She looked tired, but her eyes were clear. We need each other. The logical and the emotional, the technological and the spiritual, the ancient and the new. No single approach will pass the tests that are coming. Sun placed a hand on June's shoulder. Humanity requests the formation of a new galactic initiative, not to advance technology, but to advance wisdom. To ensure that as we reach for the stars, we don't lose what makes life worth living. For a long moment, the chamber was silent. Then, surprisingly, the Meldorian representative stood. My species has existed for 12,000 years, the crystalline being said, voice resonating strangely. In that time, we have created wonders that humans can barely comprehend. Yet when the Valari sent their cry for help, we debated while you acted. The Meldorian surface rippled with colors. Perhaps there is something we have forgotten. One by one, other representatives stood. The Trill, the Vorathi, species that had looked down on humans as primitive, emotional, creatures unworthy of their attention. The initiative is approved, the council elder announced, surprise evident in their ancient voice. Ambassador Sun, Engineer June, and Scientist Tay will lead the first commission. As Sun looked out over the chamber, he saw something he never expected to see in the Galactic Council: hope. Not the calculated optimism of beings who had planned every outcome, but the raw, uncertain hope of those facing a new beginning. Outside the chamber, beyond the council station's viewports, stars shone in the darkness. Among them, ancient safeguards waited, testing civilizations that reached for power beyond their wisdom. But now, for the first time in 50,000 years, the galaxy had remembered what the Forerunners had tried to teach them. Technology without compassion was empty. Logic without emotion was blind. And sometimes the most primitive response, to answer when someone cries for help, was the wisest choice of all. Retry Claude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.